The King's Avatar, Chapter 1590 Attack, Audio Source, WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1590, Attack. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. It was the final moment. There was no room for mistakes. Usually, players would lean towards caution. Success second, no mistakes first. It might not look too flashy, but those who understood glory knew from experience the thrill of it. Cloudpiercer had 20% of his health left while Lord Grim had less than 10%. With this health difference, most people wouldn't consider it a desperate situation, but rather an advantageous one for Cloudpiercer. That wasn't what the spectating pro players thought though, because they had thought of how Yishu could win this match. Thinking back of their experiences with Yishu, they analyzed how much health he would have if he used Small, Great, and Holy Cure back-to-back. 4%, 5%, 6% higher. For a specialized healer, the amount of health healed would be a joke to them. But at this moment, it could be what saved Yishu. With Lord Grim's advantage over Cloudpiercer in close combat, a few extra % in health would likely be enough for him to win. If you ride a tiger, it's hard to get off. It looks like Josekai is the one in trouble, Huang Shaoshan said. He spoke as if it was set in stone that Lord Grim would heal his health. Maybe not. Quote, some of the pro players were trying to think of other possibilities. With how crafty and despicable that guy's, it's probably going to happen. Zhang Jiale nodded his head. He's been holding back, waiting for the very last moment to decide this match with one move. Doesn't it feel similar to that one play? What was it? Right, it was when Cloudpiercer dodged Lord Grim's Sky Strike. Josekai had waited until the very last moment before dodging so that Yishu wouldn't be able to react in time. Don't you think it's kind of similar? The more Huang Shaoshan talked, the more excited he became. As for that one play, he had just been referring to a small little detail in this fight. No wonder he remembered it so clearly. When is he planning on acting? Quote, no one answered him. Huang Shaoshan didn't seem to care and continued on. The two were still fighting, their health bars dropping. A short while later, Cloudpiercer's health had dropped to 14%, while Lord Grim's health had dropped to 5%. A single high damage skill could remove that last 5%, but with both sides being cautious, no such opportunity was given. Their health continued to slowly decline bit by bit. Just watching it made people sit on the edges of their seat. Isn't it about time he healed? People like Huang Shaoshan and Zhang Jiale were certain that Yishu would heal. They felt like it was about time. 5% health was too dangerous. Cloudpiercer could kill him easily in one combo. Was there any need for him to slowly grind away at Lord Grim until death? Yes. There was no need. Josekai had been playing cautiously the entire time, to the extent that he would even go so far as to dodge half of a gore cross. His opponent only had 5% of his health left while his Cloudpiercer had 14%. He suddenly rushed forward. He's going to rush him. Wu Yus shouted. When Lord Grim had 10% of his health left, Wu Yus had already felt like Josekai could just rush him down. But with everyone talking about those instant heals that Yishu could use, it was quite easy to understand why Josekai would rather be a bit more careful. Rushing down the opponent would come at the sacrifice of a large amount of his health. If he wasn't able to kill off Lord Grim and Lord Grim healed himself to survive, he would be in deep trouble. Not rushing down Yishu at that time showed how clear-minded Josekai was. He was the same as the spectating pro players. He had considered these possibilities. It wasn't as difficult as guessing what skills Yishu could choose to use. Healing was its own entity, and no one would forget that Lord Grim could heal. In this situation, healing would be immensely effective. The pro players had realized it, and Josekai did too. As a result, he played more cautiously. It was only when Lord Grim had 5% of his health left did Josekai choose to rush him down. He was confident that with this health difference, he could take down Yishu in one combo and not give him an opportunity to heal. Yishu was waiting for the right moment to heal. Josekai was waiting for the right moment to rush him. Huang Shaoshan, Zhang Xinji, and many other pro players felt like it was time for Yishu to heal, but Josekai had picked this moment to make the first move. Huang Shaoshan gave a deep sigh. He was a master opportunist. Both players wanted to seize this opportunity, but in the end, Josekai had seized it first. Was it over? Not yet. Cloudpiercer twisted his body, ready to fire. Suddenly, he saw a flash of cold light. Lord Grim's myriad manifestations umbrella thrust towards him. Dragon Tooth. Josekai had no choice but to dodge. Dragon Tooth stunned, which would disrupt his rhythm. Cloudpiercer twisted his body, dodging the Dragon Tooth. His body was moving, but his two guns aimed true as they fired towards Lord Grim. The Dragon Tooth hadn't affected his rush. Bullets flew out, but Yishu seemed to have predicted it. Lord crouched. At this close of a distance, he was unexpectedly able to dodge the bullets. Then, he unsheathed the handle of the Myriad Manifestations umbrella, and used the Berserker skill, Colliding Stab. Charge. The two were only 3 steps away. For normal players, it was a distance impossible to dodge the attack. However, Yishu was facing Josekai, the most extraordinary in glory. 3 steps were the same as 0 steps for normal players, but for Josekai, it was more than enough. Dodge. The instant Yishu unsheathed his sword, Josekai's Cloudpiercer reacted. In a high-level confrontation like this, neither of them would just be standing still exchanging blows. The two were constantly moving. All of their attacking, defending, and dodging were done while moving. Cloudpiercer dodged the Dragon Tooth, while also taking the next step. When Lord Grim had used Colliding Stab, he had already taken half a step. He would dodge it. But he didn't. Josekai had unexpectedly made an error in judgment. The attack distance wasn't 3 steps. The area covered by the strike was far greater than Josekai had expected. Because the colliding stab hadn't come from the Tachi unsheathed from the umbrella. The Tachi had only been unsheathed halfway before retracting. Lord Grim had kept the same stance after using Dragon Tooth and then followed with the colliding stab. As a result, the distance of 3 steps was in fact 0 steps. Because when the Dragon Tooth came out, the umbrella had completed those 3 steps. All it did next was switch forms. The Tachi had been a feint. The Myriad Manifestations umbrella had transformed into the strange greatsword form. The canvas of the umbrella was considered the blade of the greatsword. As a result, the greatsword was ridiculously big, and the area covered by colliding stab was much bigger as a result. Hit. Cloudpiercer had been hit by the colliding stab. This skill didn't only have a knockback. The sword pierced through the target, flying out along with the target. Bang! Cloudpiercer crashed into a stalactite. There was nowhere for him to retreat to. Lord Grim closed in. At such a close distance, all Josekai could see was Lord Grim's emotionless face. Not good. Josekai had realized that the situation was bad. They were too close, so close that even a class with a close-ranged weapon like a Blade Master would feel uncomfortable, let alone a long-ranged class. At such a close distance, only punches and kicks could be performed. In other words, fighter skills. Bang. Headbutt. Another headbutt. head against head, for a second time. A punch to the stomach soon followed. It wasn't even a skill, but a normal attack. Lord Grimm's offense had begun. Josekai obviously wasn't going to just sit and let Lord Grimm hit him. Cloudpiercer used Knee Strike. Knee Strike was a low-level sharpshooter skill. It used the knee to strike the opponent. WatchOurWorldAudio.com. It was similar to the brawler's knee attack. The attack didn't have grab priority, but it had super armor. It meant that only a grab skill could interrupt it. As a shared low-level gunner skill, it was considered a godly skill for gunners in getting out of close combat. At the moment Cloudpiercer raised his knee, Lord Grimm grabbed his leg and then threw Cloudpiercer onto his shoulder before slamming him back into the stalactite. Grappler skill, receiving throw. It was a dismantle skill, a grab that ignored super armor. A sudden shift. Everyone was dumbstruck, including the spectating pro players. Heal. That was their own wishful thinking. Lord Grimm hadn't bothered to heal. When his health dropped to 5%, Josekai rushed at him. As for Yishu, he did the same. Yishu also decided to rush at Josekai. Rush down the opponent when you only had 5% of your health left. It didn't seem logical. Rushing down the opponent at that health. That was suicide. When rushing, the amount of damage taken was often more than the amount of damage dealt. Trying to kill the opponent relying on such low health would be rude. Cloudpiercer had a lot of health left. That was why Josekai rushed at Yishu. Lord Grimm had little health left. Yishu had unexpectedly done the same. Inconceivable. But that was what he did. Now, Cloudpiercer was pinned to the stalactite, with no room to run. The Gunner King was like the stuffing in a dumpling, squeezed together by the wanton wrapper, trapped and unable to escape. The 14% health was peeled off layer by layer, but was it enough? Lord Grimm could only use fighter skills. Among those, skills like Chi Bullet were unsuitable and useless to him in this situation. He had only had a few low-level skills that he could use, yet he need to finish off Cloudpiercer in one go. Punch, kick, knee, elbow, head. Lord Grimm used every part of the body that he could use to attack. 13%, 12%, 11%. Right now, everyone wasn't thinking about what Josekai could do, but rather whether Yishu could continue this combo until the end. The broadcast was clever. The broadcast team quickly figured out where the key lay and immediately pulled out Lord Grimm's skill tree to show everyone his cooldowns. The umbrella was in its fighter weapon form. All other class skills were gray, unable to be used. Among the fighter skills available to Lord Grimm, there was a big red question mark. It was the bonus skill on his claw form. It wouldn't appear in the skill tree. However, everyone knew that Yishu had chosen to add headbutt. All of his skills were low-level, so the cooldowns weren't long. Even so, was it possible for him to chain these skills long enough to finish off Cloudpiercer? It's not enough, someone said. Pan Lin and Li Yibo obviously wouldn't dare to come to this conclusion. These two were too afraid of making any remarks towards Yishu. It was Han Wenking who said it. He was the expert at close combat and also a fighter class. His judgment was naturally very reliable. It's probably just by a bit. Wang Jiexi said. Would this tiny bit be enough for Josekai to turn it around? Everyone's gaze returned to the stage. They would know soon enough. Lord Grimm's fighter skills would soon all be on cooldown. He would only be able to use normal skills or other class skills. He wouldn't be able to keep up an inescapable combo. Josekai couldn't see Lord Grimm's skill tree, yet he seemed to see it more clearly than any of the ones who could see it. He immediately saw the opening and seized it. Roundhouse kick. Cloudpiercer spun around with a kick, but Lord Grim had already activated Cloud Body and jumped out of the way. Cloudpiercer jumped up, pulled out his gun, and fired wildly. Lord Grim's body flickered. The distance of 3 steps was instantly closed. Blade out, blade in. Assassin skill, teleporting stab. Cloudpiercer's health dropped to 0. Nice try. You were close, Yizhu typed into chat with a smiley face. End chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1591. Establishing Dominance. Audio source, WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1591. Establishing Dominance. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Lose. Win. Samsara's fans were in a daze. Happy's fans were in a daze. Unlike the pro players, they hadn't fully grasped what had just happened. Their judgment had been very simple: whoever had more health was winning. Of course, this sort of judgment wasn't wrong. Yes, whoever had more health was winning. The end outcome of the battle could be considered a reversal from Yizhu. It was just that the reversal had been too quick. In the previous second, the two characters seemed to be evenly matched. Suddenly, Josei's Cloudpiercer was pinned to a stalagmite, seemingly powerless. Then, just when he was finally able to escape, a silver blade went in and a red blade came out, marking the end of the battle. How could it be? How could it be? Samsara's fans were at a loss. Happy's fans were also at a loss. They had thought that they would lose this fight. Getting Josei's Cloudpiercer down to such a low amount of health was still an acceptable result, though. This sort of thought was just them comforting themselves. Whether it was the confrontation between the current and former number 1, or Yizhu's legendary 1v1 win streak, none of Happy's fans wanted to see Yizhu lose. As for whether it was good or bad for the group arena as a whole, this sort of rational reasoning wasn't something that fans gave consideration to. But contrary to their expectations, they had won. Just like they had hoped, Yizhu had won. Just before, they had been constructing mental barriers, coming up with a reason to comfort themselves. All of a sudden, everything was flipped on top of their heads. Everyone was in a daze for a long time, all the way until Josei left the player booth. Reality finally sunk in. The fans gathered at the away team seats began to cheer. How did he win? They didn't know, but it wasn't important. Yizhu had won, so let's celebrate first. They could always go back and slowly analyze it at a later time. The audience could take on this mentality, but the commentators, Pan Lin and Li Yibo, couldn't. There was no later in a live broadcast. The two had to discuss the sudden reversal from Yizhu. As a result, the Myriad Manifestations umbrella during that reversal became the focus of the discussion. The Dragon Tooth had closed the distance beforehand, so when Colliding Stab was used, it came out at point-blank range. The greatsword form of the Myriad Manifestations umbrella is truly gigantic. The area covered by Colliding Stab is quite large, making it quite difficult to dodge. Look, the moment Colliding Stab came out, Lord Grim pulled out the Tachi from his umbrella's handle. This small movement misled Josei into misjudging the attack. Yes, what an elaborate scheme. The two spoke back and forth, not at all stingy with their praise. The two were even thinking of the future. Whenever Yizhu was in a 1v1, they should just immediately start out by declaring Yizhu's victory. Then, wouldn't anything they said after that be untouchable? Through this evaluation, the two were able to move past the reversal. But for the pro players, while this feint was very important, it wasn't as simple as that. Yizhu, Josei, the two players with the title of number 1 were very similar to each other in many ways. Just take how they played. Compared to normal players who cared strongly about hand speed, the deepest impression that these two players gave wasn't speed but precision. The two were exceptionally precise. Because of this precision, the two frequently made plays with little room for error. Zhou Zekai was able to perform such an impressive display of gun fu because of this precision. Ye Xiu dared to rush down Zhou Zekai despite only having 5% of his health remaining because of this precision. Apart from precision, their decision-making and intuition were similar. When either of them took control, it was extremely difficult for the opponent to find an opening to counter-attack. At the end of the battle, Lord Grimm had pinned Cloudpiercer against a stalagmite and fought at close combat. Was there no such opportunity before? No. He had intentionally saved this move for the very end at the deciding moment. Everyone was shocked at his decision to rush down Zhou Zekai with only 5% health remaining on Lord Grimm. But in reality, Ye Xiu hadn't been looking at his own health, but rather Cloudpiercer's 14%. As they traded blows, he knew that Zhou Zekai was waiting for an opportunity to finish him off in one combo. He was the same. But his Lord Grimm could also heal. The 3 instant cast heals could be added onto his Myriad Manifestations umbrella. However, during this entire battle, he had never used any of them. It was hard to not be suspicious. The spectating pro players had been certain that he was saving these heals for a final explosive burst. They thought that he had chosen not to use these heals before because he had been waiting for the right opportunity. When their health dropped low enough, he would heal, and Zhou Zekai wouldn't be able to react in time. The pro players had been partially correct. Ye Xiu had been waiting for the right opportunity. However, he wasn't waiting for an opportunity to heal. Instead, he had been waiting for an opportunity to counterattack, waiting until Cloudpiercer's health was low enough for him to kill him in one combo. He had also been waiting for Zhou Zekai to rush him down. When performing a rush, attacking the opponent would be the priority, while defense would be secondary. Ye Xiu had been watching Cloudpiercer's health carefully. He seized the moment Zhou Zekai decided to rush at him and counter-rushed him. The two were fighting at close range, and a sharpshooter couldn't compare to an unspecialized in close combat. And this time, Ye Xiu wasn't going to give him any opportunity to trade. He would wipe out that 14% in one go. Everyone saw what happened afterwards. Lord Grimm completely suppressed Cloudpiercer. Apart from taking some damage when forcing the colliding stab, Cloudpiercer was unable to do anything. An opening had appeared because Lord Grimm wasn't able to continue his combo, but Ye Xiu had been ready. Cloudpiercer was only hit away from death. With a teleport, Lord Grimm gave the final fatal strike. What the pro players saw wasn't just technical prowess, but their control over the pace of the fight. Ye Xiu had won. A very close win. But if you considered how he had taken such a massive amount of damage from the Thunder Snipe at the start and then made a comeback from a disadvantageous position, he had been the one with a stronger grasp over the pace of the fight. Of course, Lord Grimm's class as an unspecialized and his transforming Myriad Manifestations umbrella contributed greatly towards this achievement. If he wasn't an unspecialized without the possibility of healing, Zhou Zekai wouldn't have waited until Lord Grimm only had 5% health before trying to rush him down. If Lord Grimm couldn't heal, Zhou Zekai would have likely rushed him down to decide the fight when Lord Grimm had over 10% of his health left. In the online game, in PvP, if the winner relied on a class advantage or an equipment advantage to win, the loser would often spike the winner for having an unfair advantage. WuxRWorldAudio.com. But on the pro stage, everyone would exploit the slightest of advantages to win. Ye Xiu was no different. His unspecialized and his myriad manifestations umbrella gave other pro players a huge headache. They really wanted to be like the in-game players. If you didn't have that stupid umbrella, or if you weren't playing a broken class, I would have won. But then again, when Yishu had been using a battle mage, hadn't they been getting slapped left and right as well? The pro players applauded. It had been a spectacular fight. The winner showed terrifying skill, but the loser did as well. When watching a match, they often pretended as if they were the ones playing. Their expressions were grave. Clearly, none of them dared to say that it might have gone differently if they had been the ones playing. Game 2 of the finals. The first round of the group arena had ended. In Samsara's home stadium, Happy had won the first round. Yishu continued his legendary win streak, and this time, he had defeated Josekai, the number 1 player. With this win, he shut up the haters, who argued that his win streak was because he was avoiding those ace players in the group arena. Even Josekai had lost against him. If that wasn't enough to legitimize his win streak, did he need to play 1v2s? The Samsara fans in the crowd were silent. Their ace, the god in their eyes, had lost. He had come out specifically to play against Yishu, coming out full-forced, yet he had lost. Samsara's fans weren't used to this. For a moment, they were having trouble accepting reality, to the point of even forgetting to give a consolation applause to the loser. In their eyes, there were only cheers and praise for Josekai. Consoling him as the loser didn't feel right. Then, it's my turn. Quote, at Samsara's bench, Jiang Botao got up and went to welcome Josekai back. Josekai nodded his head. He was always quiet, so it was hard to tell what he was feeling. 4% health, huh? He's probably going to heal now. Jiang Botao muttered as he walked towards the stage. The atmosphere in the stadium was heavy. Samsara had forgotten to console Josekai, who had lost. They had also forgotten to cheer to give their Jiang Botao encouragement. They were still trying to take in the fact that Josekai had lost. But Jiang Botao didn't appear to be concerned. 4%. Lord Grimm only had a few drops of health left. From the perspective of the group arena as a whole, Josekai's loss wasn't bad. It was just that because of how important the fight had been to the audience. Because Josekai had gone first to play against Yishu, because it was a challenge that Josekai had taken the initiative to put out. In the end, he lost. It made Samsara's fans feel embarrassed and ashamed. Josekai had never given them these feelings before. There were even a few girls out in the audience who burst out into tears. But Josekai's teammate, Samsara's vice-captain Jiang Botao, wasn't affected by the atmosphere. He walked calmly onto the stage and into the player booth. The characters loaded. The map loaded. The match began. Hello, senior. I'm coming. Josekai had been silent, but as soon as Jiang Botao went onto the stage, he greeted Yishu enthusiastically. Coming to surrender, Yishu replied. No way, said Jiang Botao. I'm here to experience how fearsome you seniors are. End chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1592. Healer. Audio source. wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1592. Healer. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. The exchange between Yishu and Jiang Botao before the match began hadn't been broadcasted or recorded. So only those who'd been on stage at the time knew that Jiang Botao's message was a callback to what they'd said earlier. The audience didn't know anything about it, so they just treated it as a polite challenge. But Lord Grimm only had 4% health left. For a Spellblade, most wave formation attacks would be enough to knock out that much health. From the very beginning, this face-off would be a very lopsided one. But Happy's supporters didn't lose faith. Those who thought that a match was already over at low health, why not go talk to last match's Lin Jingyan? It wasn't just Happy's supporters, either. Even Pan Lin and Li Yibo clearly had a lot of faith in Yishu right now. Lord Grimm still has 4% health, said Pan Lin. Yes. With Jiang Botao's Spellblade, one-wave formation could probably take him out, said Li Yibo. No matter what, this was the situation. It wouldn't be wrong to explain it. Let's see what Yishu will do, said Pan Lin. Heal, of course. That was what Li Yibo thought, but he didn't voice the thought. What if that guy didn't heal? Heal, this guy's definitely going to heal again. Quote, among the pro players, countless people were already pointing it out. He always does that, the same old thing. Having this kind of character appear in the group arena is so broken, the Alliance should do something about it. Someone coughed. It was Tiny Herb Zubin. Lord Grimm was able to heal by relying on the low-level skills of the Cleric and Paladin classes. The low-level skills of these classes weren't limited to just unspecialized though. The other priest classes, the Knight and Exorcist, could learn them too. And reality showed that the players of these two classes wouldn't pass on this kind of opportunity. In particular, the Cleric's small cure and the Paladin's recover were practically a necessity for their classes. Healing during a solo battle wasn't patented by the unspecialized Lord Grimm, it was something that these two classes often did as well. Defeating an opponent during the group arena and then hiding at the start of the next battle to heal was commonly done when it came to them. But their presence was far weaker than that of Yishu and Lord Grimm. Zubin's cough didn't catch much attention, and the other players were all rising in rebellion to denounce this kind of practice. They completely overlooked the fact that they were attacking more than just Yishu. Beox Novel. Siom. Zubin felt incredibly awkward. If he jumped up now to say something, wouldn't that just be the same as eating these attacks? Helpless, he could only maintain his silence, pretending that he had nothing to do with this. As he looked around, he couldn't help but see someone else wearing a similarly awkward expression, looking like he wanted to distance himself. The two of them met eyes, reaching a tacit mutual understanding. Zubin, Knight player. Tiansen, Exorcist player. Both were priest classes, group arena healers that everyone was now attacking for being dirty, shameless, sneaky, foul, cheating, undignified, unoriginal. He's definitely going to heal, is that even a question? Look at how he's scurrying around so sneakily, he's looking for somewhere to hide, right? How much is he planning to heal? All the way. Finally, the topic had one single target again. Just in time, Huang Shaoshan turned the conversation subject back to the ongoing match. Yishu's Lord Grimm was currently moving, not toward the center road, and not circling around. Just like Huang Shaoshan had said, he looked like he was searching for a place to hide and heal up for all eternity. Look, he's about to heal right now. He's healing. He's really healing. Small heal. Fuck, just like we thought, he's just that disgraceful. Of course he heals. Huang Shaoshan rattled on, far noisier than the broadcast commentator Pan Lin. How could Pan Lin dare use this kind of mocking speech to criticize Yishu? Shame on him. Yeah, so unfair. We have to change the competing rules. As the discussion progressed, Zubin and Tiansen, as well as the other Knight and Exorcist players, all lowered their heads. Even though they knew that everyone was talking about Yishu and had just forgotten about him for the moment, they simply had no way to face this calmly. He's still showing off in the chat. He thinks he's so honorable. Huang Shaoshan continued to shout. At the moment, Yishu had just sent a message in the chat. Are you at the center yet? Hold on, I'm healing first. Jiang Botao's empty waves had just arrived at the center of the map without seeing Lord Grimm. He'd already been thinking that Yishu might heal, and with this message, the other player made it very clear. He was very straightforward, very confident. He just told him directly. But Jiang Botao wasn't just going to wait there. WuxRWorldAudio.com. If he waited for Yishu to voluntarily show up, then he'd probably be waiting until Lord Grimm was completely reborn. Jiang Botao controlled empty waves to move forward toward Lord Grimm's spawn point. Along the way, he changed his path constantly, adjusting his view. Because he'd watched the previous match from off-stage, he knew that Yishu had ways of covering himself. Fortunately, Samsara had chosen this map and so they were more familiar with it. After seeing Yishu's tactic earlier, as long as they paid attention, it wouldn't have much effect against him anymore. Jiang Botao was now on guard against this tactic as he controlled empty waves to move forward, but he didn't discover anything. Soon, the dripstone along his path had all been carefully sifted through, and the only remaining possible places for Lord Grimm to hide were in front of him. There were 3 stalagmites, standing in a triangle, relatively close together. Yishu's Lord Grimm was probably right behind one of them. Jiang Botao didn't let empty waves approach to investigate. When the distance was close enough, he quietly lifted his sword and began to cast. The short sword divine chain rippled. Over here. Jiang Botao didn't wait for Lord Grimm to appear. Empty waves lifted his sword and swung it, releasing a waltzing wave formation that circled around toward that stalagmite. The stadium was silent. By this point, Samsara's fans had basically recovered from the emotions of Josekai's defeat, but seeing their vice-captain bravely fighting on stage right now, they couldn't reward him with applause. Beox Novel. Siom. Because, with the omniscient view, they could see that behind that stalagmite wasn't Lord Grimm, but a goblin that he had summoned. Little Lou, did you see that? If you're too simple and naive, you're no match for Yishu. Seeing this scene, Huang Shaoshan sighed and gave this lesson to his junior sitting next to him. Simple and naive? You're talking about Jiang Botao. Quote. When Misty Rain's Li Hua heard this, he couldn't help but interject, surprised. Of course not, I'm just using an example. That guy definitely isn't, said Huang Shaoshan. Jiang Botao, Season 6 debut. After joining Samsara, he began making a name for himself. Under Josekai's light, the Samsara players all seemed less eye-catching. But as opponents that had interacted with him on stage, everyone was clear that Samsara's Jiang Botao was not an easy character to deal with. At the very least, simple and naive definitely was not a phrase that could describe him. End chapter.